Good afternoon and welcome back to your afternoon 5-State Farm Report. Danielle Drotzman, your host here for 570 WNAX. Thanks for joining us here today on this Thursday. Glad you are all here with us. Well, as we kind of round out the month of June here, we are still talking about June Dairy Month. And we have a special guest with us here today. Visiting here today with Heidi Zwinger. She is the Executive Director of the South Dakota Dairy Producers. Well, Heidi, thank you for joining us here today on WNAX. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful today.
Perfect. Well, I guess with that, June is Dairy Month. We're kind of rounding out the month of June already, which is kind of crazy. So, but I guess with that, has the South Dakota Dairy Producers been up to anything for the month, just to kind of promote the product, or maybe just fill us in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Dairy Month is a great time for a bowl of ice cream and a cold glass of milk, but also a couple of events that South Dakota Dairy Producers and Midwest Dairy or Checkoff are both involved in. Every year we do through the Dairy Fest Committee in the Brookings area, we host an on-farm, family-friendly, free event where we invite the general public to come and visit the dairy farm. So Saturday, June 6th, at Crosswinds Jerseys, which is a dairy near Elkton, South Dakota. We hosted probably somewhere between 1,600 and 1,700 people who came out to the farm to see firsthand where their milk comes from. They had grilled cheese sandwiches and ice cream, chocolate milk and cheese, all the essentials for the farm, but it really this, I think, is the 13th year we've done the event, and it really gives the average person who isn't tied to a farm anymore or have grandparents on the farm an opportunity to come and see firsthand where their milk comes from and how the farmers care for their animals and learn more about what cows eat and where they live. So it's a great event, and like I said, this is something we've done for a number of years, and it continues to grow. It's just been wonderful. So
yeah, it just sounds like a great event, and that's just so important, kind of just to spread the word about agriculture, educate those who maybe haven't had the same opportunities we have had. So sounds like a really great event. So just I guess one hot topic that's kind of been circling around the industry too has been the dietary guidelines as well, which was kind of released I think earlier this year, and that really highlighted protein and just specifically animal protein, and that's, I'm sure, been really great for dairy.
Yes, the updated dietary guideline recommendations, especially from a standpoint of including dairy at all fat levels, has really been a big win for dairy. Our dairy foods provide such a unique combination of nutrients, and dairy is so abundant and affordable, and it can offer something for everybody's wellness and taste preferences, right? So if you want standard 2% milk and 8 grams of protein, you've got it, right? That's kind of what we grew up with, but now there's so many varieties of ultra-filtered, lactose-free, high-protein milk where you can get 32 grams of protein in a serving versus your standard 8 grams. So when we're talking about protein, a recent study, 70% of Americans want to increase their protein intake, right? So dairy has a great opportunity to provide the protein for these folks. And you won't just find it in the dairy aisle. You'll find it in your snack foods like cheese and, honestly, places you wouldn't think to look. I randomly, in the grocery store a couple weeks ago, came across high-protein Doritos. And when you look at the ingredients, whey protein is the first ingredient for these chips. So instead of using corn, they're using the whey protein, drying it down, giving it a similar flavor to what the corn chips would have. And honestly, they're really not too bad. Sometimes we make a new product and it's so far from the original, people don't grasp onto it, but this was pretty close. Definitely can satisfy your need for something crunchy and have a little bit more health kick to it. So that was something interesting. And then also, like, on the back to the dietary guidelines a little bit with is the offering whole milk at school is a big win for us as well. It makes a meaningful contribution to children's nutrition and helping close the nutrient gaps and support healthy growth and development of those kids, right? So sometimes we know the only time kids get dairy and milk is at school. They might not have that at home, and it's such a nutrient-dense product that any time that we can get kids to consume it is a win for their health.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely a lot of great things that went into those guidelines, and just there's a lot of good nutrients you can get from dairy too. So, and I know it might not be kind of an overnight impact that these dietary guidelines will have, but it will definitely help with the demand of the product to know it's safe and it's healthy, and it's very convenient too, especially for things like, cottage cheese or so.
Absolutely. And even your cottage cheese, we're adding more protein to the cottage cheese now. Mm-hmm. And that, not to go completely back to where I started, but the protein piece and the whey is amazing, the things that we're doing with whey. And to think back probably 20 years ago or more, whey was a byproduct that dairy processing plants had to try to get rid of. Like, they would dump it on the fields as waste. And now it's an economic driver. So it's amazing through the research and innovation that we've done with product development in the dairy industry that we can continue to find new uses and really, really beneficial uses for our dairy and all of the ingredients in it. So.
Absolutely. Well, I guess kind of just switching gears here a little bit. I know obviously in the state of South Dakota don't consume all of the dairy that we produce. So exports have to be a very beneficial thing for the industry. So, do we export a lot of product, or, what's maybe some of our main markets there?
Yes, we do export a lot of product. In 2025, the U.S. exported more than 17% of its milk production. The export value reaching roughly $9.6 billion. And obviously, Mexico and Canada are our two largest customers, which is great because they're also our two closest customers. But to be able to keep that strong trade enforcement and continued market access is critical from a national dairy export stance, and also to bring it back to South Dakota dairy. We are a very cheese-heavy market. So with Agri-Per having 9 million pounds of milk per day processing capacity, and Valley Queen as well has 9 million pounds of processing, they're making primarily cheese, and that cheese can be exported not only out of the country, but first it's got to leave the state. I think close to 80 to 90% of the product that is milk processed into cheese then leaves our state. So the great thing is that we're adding the value to the product here in South Dakota before we're sending it out for consumption.
Gotcha. And I guess, is there a specific economic impact that kind of all this exports and stuff brings to the state of South Dakota?
That is a great question. Yes, there is an economic impact. And if you look at the total economic impact, it's about $1.6 billion in direct economic impact for the state of South Dakota.
Yeah, that's definitely a big market there. So it's very good for our producers here in the state. But that's kind of all I have for you. So I guess anything to wrap up with here today? I
really appreciate the time that you've given me today. And, South Dakota Dairy Producers continues to work with key industry partners, to continue to promote dairy and agriculture in the state in the form of favorable dairy policy, and also what we can do in our state to help promote things like exports and dietary regulations on a federal level. A lot of that starts grassroots right here in our state, and South Dakota Dairy Producers is really proud to be a part of it.
All right. And again, that is Heidi Zwinger. She is the Executive Director of the South Dakota Dairy Producers Association, joining us here today on your Thursday afternoon 5-State Farm Report. With that, we will take a quick break. We will take a look at some ag weather. And then here at the bottom of the hour, we will wrap up your market day here. So stay tuned. So 570 WNAX, I'm Danielle Drotzman.